Hey, this is Monique. Welcome back to One Mo Project. This time I made something for my grandson. I know, big surprise. But he stays at my house sometimes and he needs some way to keep warm because it's not really always that warm in my house. So I made him a baby bag. Oh, yeah, okay. So under the advice of counsel, we're not going to call it a baby bag. So I made a baby sack. Yeah, so we can't call it a baby sack. Okay, so I made him a baby sleeping sack. Okay, we have permission to go with that. Anyway, I'll show you what I did. So I made my pattern by just drawing around one of these baby sleeping sacks that my grandson already had. But I have a scale drawing of this at the end of the video if you're interested in making one. Anyway, when I pin, I always pin close to the corners. That way when I turn, it doesn't slip around. And I cut on a flat surface everything that I can reach easily, just quick around the bottom edges there. But instead of reaching all the way across the table, I roll that up to keep it straight and then bring those last cuts closer to me so that I'm not moving that whole big piece of fabric and making it stretch out funny. I didn't make a front pattern and a back pattern, so that's why I have to just fold it like that to cut the neck of the front lower. The front neck is always going to be a little lower than the back neck of any shirt or baby sleeping sack. And then I used this contrasting fleece to make the binding. And fleece is a knit, so it wasn't necessary for me to make it big enough to fold like a bias tape that needs the raw edge protected. This isn't going to ravel, so it's going to be good. At the bottom here, I cut this little slit at the very bottom in the middle to help me line up the bottom and the zipper as I get further along in it. But before I take off all my pattern, I went ahead and marked the middle down there. Because this is a knit and I'm doing these shoulder seams that needed some kind of reinforcement, I just used a piece of woven cotton fabric that I had. It's maybe not the most ideal, but you know, it's for a baby to sleep in. And it protected it from stretching, because that's the big thing, is so that it doesn't deform that shoulder so much and make it really out of proportion the way it should be. So I just folded that piece of cotton fabric around it and used my serger. If you don't have a serger, you should get one. No, you can sew it straight and then zigzag it, or not, because it's fleece, it's not going to ravel. So then I went ahead and put this neck binding around it. I marked the center back with a pin and then sewed around that neck opening with the right sides together. If I have to do it again, I have to, which I probably will because he's going to get bigger, but I will do this different. I'll do it the opposite way. I'll sew it from the inside and wrap it around to the outside. It'll make the final amount of contrast that shows look a little neater than it did. But instead of trying to get the length right, I just sewed around until it overlapped about an inch and then cut off the extra. And then I'm going to trim away my seam, especially there at the shoulder seam, to get rid of as much of the bulk as I can, and fold that bias, even though it's not on a bias, fold that tape around it. Now, one of the things I did that will help make this easier to use, though, is that I set my machine to a stretch stitch. On mine, it looks like 3 little lines right next to each other. If your machine has a stretch stitch, use that. If it doesn't, use the zigzag. Don't make it super wide or long. You're going to want to make it a little bit more narrow and a little bit shorter than what it's going to default to. But a zigzag stitch will give you a little bit of a stretch in your fabric, because, you know, I'm going to be trying to get this on and off of a sleepy baby or a just woke up baby or, you know, just a baby. They just don't do well sometimes at putting clothes on and off. So anyway, that didn't come out exactly the same amount of that contrast showing. So next time when he gets a little bigger and I make another one, I will change that some, but it's going to be good. It'll be better than being cold because he's not under a blanket. So the next thing I did was put the zipper on, and I put it across the bottom. The one that he has, that his parents got him, that's very cute though, it zips up the front, and I've used that a few times, and it's I mean, you're trying to get it on a baby. And if he's sleepy and fussy, it's hard to get him to be still so you can get that zipper to zip up and down. So I thought I'd try this across the bottom. And I've used it a few times already, and it really did work pretty well to just zip across the bottom. So I sewed that on just flat on the top, not the traditional kind of way you might do a zipper. I let the whole zipper tape outside of it show, but it made it easy to sew on. I pinned it across there so that I make sure that the fabric didn't stretch as I sewed the zipper. It's not necessary to use your stretch stitch on this because the tape on the side of the zipper is not going to stretch any. And then to get the other side to match, I had 3 points of reference. One was to use each of the corners at the armpit and pull it down and make sure it's even. And then I was also able to use that little cut that I had made in the center of the bottom. And so I could pin that on and make sure that it was going to be even when I zipped it up and not zip further to one side or stretch or just, sometimes interesting things happen. So then I just sewed that on flat again. So you can see I didn't even change to my zipper foot. I just let it sew all the way at the edge of the zipper tape. And it came out pretty good. All the way across there. And then the most challenging part was because it was kind of curved on each end. So to judge that so that it worked out straight and didn't let it stretch. But that worked pretty good. So that zipped up. Looks good. And then I trimmed away the extra because I didn't necessarily keep it 100% even across the bottom on the inside. Now here at each end of the zipper, because I was going to use the serger on it, I used my regular machine to get in tight against the end of the zipper because it's hard to get the serger in and out of places. It's not like you can just stop and start in the middle of the seam. You need to go all the way off the end. So I gave myself a little bit of extra room there to be able to use the serger on the sides, but not have to go all the way up against the zipper. There I am. Now I'm going to trim off all the extra that I don't really need beyond the seam there along the zipper tape. Alright, and now I'm going to do that side seam, and because it's not so much on the diagonal of the grain, it doesn't need that reinforcement. If you had some kind of reinforcement stuff that was easier to use, maybe, but for what I'm doing, I didn't need it. So now I'm going to finish the armhole opening, and I'm going to do it the same way I did the neck binding by putting the fabric right side together and using the stretch stitch again and going around. And you see I turned it inside out so that I could have the opening stay above where I was working the whole time, and that way I don't accidentally catch the other side. And then same thing, turn it right side out now when I fold it so that I can see where it is I'm sewing without having that little bit get trapped underneath it. Alright, look at that. Thanks for watching. Maybe that was useful. Maybe you're going to make a baby sleeping sack. Maybe not. Anyway, here's something out of context. Behold, I tell you a great mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed. Okay, that's out of context, but it's funny for the church nursery. Anyway, see you next time.